Maybe it's because I watched this specifically to review it, maybe it's because I was constantly pausing to take notes, maybe it's because I've already seen reviews, which I specifically told myself not to do for the FNAF and Minecraft movie, but this show sucks. I don't know if you'd care about spoilers this time, but it's about James, based on the creator himself, TheMid1sOut, who I'll be referring to as that to differentiate the two of them, living in a town full of scientists and things, and particularly getting into shenanigans with his friends Max the Crocodile and Echo the Time Traveler. And originally, it was about James feeling like he doesn't fit in, and then feeling accepted after moving to this crazy town, but I guess the executives didn't think that would sell, so the very personal themes, if we're judging by the YouTube videos, of social validation and acceptance were thrown out, so now James has always lived here and his mom works as a scientist at the local facility. But you know what? Fine. If TheMid1sOut couldn't tell a story about when he was trying to be cool and hated his life, then maybe it could have been about James being incredibly spoiled and entitled since his mom has such an important, high-paying job, and the episodes are about him learning the value of friendship, not being selfish, yada yada yada. They tried going for that trait in the show, but James's entitlement is only ever shown to be a result of his own pet peeves from being a kid, without the combined fact that him and his parents live in a big fancy suburban house. In fact, they actually seem to be good parents. He's not even allowed to own a smartphone yet, even though he gets to keep a laptop in his room. I don't know how much his parents trust him with it, but they should have thought that before they designed James's bedroom. Entitled is the only way I can really think of to describe James, but there aren't many episodes where I feel he is as selfish as he's established to be. I'd say it takes until episode 5 for that to happen. James gloats about getting the nicest person award right after complaining about participation trophies, but then the school bully Stuart takes over his body and controls him to be a menace, and Echo wants James to admit his trophy is worthless before she helps him. In an episode where he's not as selfish, he finds a golf cart and starts carpooling his classmates around, then he gets tired of that and wants the golf cart to himself. There's another episode where James learns to be more assertive because Echo keeps being uncharacteristically inconsiderate and intrusive. If you're wondering what she's like, she's snarky and kind of a glutton, and I thought it would take 2 episodes for her to actually become friends with James and Max, and she came to the past because there's no processed food in the future and she wants to stop that from happening. I mean, I guess she'd be lazy, but I don't really believe she'd do something like overtaking all of James's stuff after he lies about becoming a minimalist. Also, another thing I noticed in the show, there are times where characters act stupider than they're supposed to be, and it's because they keep doing bits like James very poorly acting like there's no funny business happening. Echo falls for it in the minimalist part, and other times in the same episode, James's parents fall for it once, including his mom, who's a scientist if you forgot. The principal, he's a loudspeaker by the way, mistakes James for a teacher, and so does the fly teacher. He's a fly and he's broke. So does Max at first, and it only kind of makes sense with him. He's dumb and random and also a glutton like Echo, and I know this video already pointed it out, but he was wasted because the first episode shows that he has childhood trauma from the scientist that grew him never treating him like a person. So he also mistreats him and James's now alive toaster. And it only ever comes back up in like 2 gags. Even in an episode with a similar plot to the first, Max is shown to be a good, responsible parent and only fails because he was sabotaged. He seems to be pretty resilient if he's able to consistently remain so positive and carefree despite his past, but once again, it's never really explored. You'd think his social skills would be pretty bad too, but they're not. It would make sense if he was normal around James and Echo, but then they'd actually have to think about why that is. They also keep doing these ultra detailed shots of him like in SpongeBob, and it's only funny the first time it happens, in episode 1, which is supposed to set up the show having all these crazy twists and turns, and more at the end of the day, you know. It wasn't as predictable as I thought it would be. Honestly, the twist at the end of episode 6 was a pretty good one, but when it was boring. I didn't expect much initially from the show going into it, but I didn't think it would be so boring. Episode 2 and 3 in particular are absolutely horrendous in how predictable they are. Episode 2 is about James's mom turning him into a smartphone to see if he's responsible enough to own a smartphone. I didn't think it would literally be the second episode, but I did know it would end with him deciding that he doesn't want a phone after all. The next episode is about James killing a fly in his room, and then at school the fly teacher talks about how his grandma went missing yesterday, and I immediately thought it would end up being a misunderstanding. At first I was willing to believe it could have gone in a different direction, but the closer it got to that big reveal, the more I expected it to be exactly what I thought. I wouldn't have even cared as long as the show was interesting, or if it was funny, but usually it's not. I don't even know know how to explain it, so you know what? Here's one of the bits I did find funny. In the scene where James initially kills the fly, he says it was because it trespassed onto his turf. Then at the end of the episode, James kills a mosquito, but Max says we're on their turf, and then they get chased away by like 10,000 mosquitoes. I don't like the setting. Why? Well, remember when I said that James lives in a city with a big science facility that his mom works at? Well, maybe you do. This video probably won't be too long, but if you don't remember, that's okay, because about half the episodes aren't science related at all. Like episode 6, where James uses deodorant to make it look like he's crying to win something called competitive feelings, and they couldn't even commit to the science gimmick. Episode 4 has actual aliens in it, which I guess is excusable since the concept of aliens isn't exactly supernatural, but then in episode 5, Stuart is said to be a demon, which is also the only time he ever does anything you can consider supernatural. I'm stealing observations again, but it's an important one and not a hard one to make either. You'd think with this setting, a good number of episodes would have James trying to exploit some experiment and use it against a really minor problem that eventually gets bigger, kinda going back to when I proposed him being really spoiled, but that barely happens. But what I really dislike about the setting is that its main purpose is to simply justify why the characters are just random things like in Gumball, except in that show, the characters are random things because it already uses a bunch of mismatched animation styles, and that helps with giving a greater sense of variety. This is lame.